You want to buy your first luxury watch? There are several points you need to consider, and we have a clear preference on which watch is the best watch for everybody who is getting into the luxury watch segment. This is Patrick from Gold Luxury Jewelers in Germany, and today we are talking about one of the best watches regarding price ratio and also regarding the look. We're talking about the Tudor Prince Date and the Tudor Prince Date Day. And as many of you know, Tudor is like a daughter company of Rolex itself, and therefore they are of course like trying to be the, let's say, cheaper alternative to Rolex. And especially when you're getting into the luxury watch segment, maybe you don't want to spend 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or even 10,000 euros on your first watch, and the Tudors we're talking about is the perfect watch to take when your maximum budget is like between 2,000 and 3,000 euros. And what you get for the money is, for the luxury watch segment, really crazy. The value you get for your money is awesome. The variations you can choose are awesome. And as you're just getting into the luxury watch business, also the value the watch holds for future trade-ins is awesome. And we will get into those different points in. We will show you some watches we have in stock, and I can tell you we have many in stock because we sell them really good and they're like easy movers. And if a watch is easy moving, it's always also good for you as a client, because if you want to buy or if you want to sell, you don't really lose a lot of money or even lose money when you sell or trade in, because dealers like to have those watches in stock that are like easy sellers and easy in maintenance. So for me as a luxury watch dealer, I have almost the same aspects to consider like you when you buy your first luxury watch, which is crazy. As already told in introduction, one of the most important points is definitely the price point. So if you were looking around the market already and you said, okay, I want to spend 3,000 euros maximum, you may have recognized there are not too many options in the market, because in the luxury watch segment, as crazy as it seems, 3,000 euros is not a lot of money. Maybe you also came across the Speedmaster Reduced as a watch for beginners. But why I personally, or we recommend the Tudor above the Speedmaster will also be discussed within the video, but during the end, because at first you want to put the focus on these watches. So taking the price point, 3,000 euros, you have a lot of variations to choose from. So the variations the Tudor Prince series gives you is really crazy. Firstly, starting, we said the video is about the Tudor Prince Date and the Tudor Prince Date Day. So you have to start, okay, do I want to have a watch only that shows the date, which is the Tudor Prince Date, or do I want to have a watch that shows the date and the day, which is the Tudor Date Day? You may also know that Rolex has the day date, and the date day is basically the same, except that Rolex only offers those date day functions with their gold watches, and with Tudor you also get it with the steel gold watches or even with the steel watches, which is really nice because it simply gives you the same function, the same complication, but it makes the watch way cheaper. And as you're buying your first watch, of course it's nice to have like a little complication, at least a date. But also the day-date version or the day-day version is also really nice to have, because it just feels like a, let's say, more advanced watch. So I personally, I would always go with the day-day version of Tudor, but in the end it's up to your personal taste and you can just choose what you prefer. A lot of our clients prefer the date-only version because the dial is a bit warmer. Next to the date or date-day variation, you have to choose if you want to go with a steel variation or a steel gold variation, because both versions are offered, and the crazy thing is they are offered in the same price range. So there's not really a big price difference between the steel gold and the steel models, which is also like crazy, but it's up to your personal taste what you prefer. Once you prefer it, if you want to go with the steel or the steel gold version, you have to think about the bezel, because just like Rolex, Tudor also offers a fluted bezel, which is like reflecting the whole light a bit more and is a bit more shiny. Or you can also get the smooth bezel, which is like more undercover and more decent. It's again fully up to your personal taste what you prefer, but once you know if you want a date day or a date, if you want a steel gold or a steel, if you want a fluted bezel or smooth bezel, you still have to choose from a lot of different dial variations. So there are simple dials that are just glossy with Arabic numerals. There are simple glossy dials that are with normal indices. There are dials that are more like the tapestry or the linen dials from Rolex. And of course, to make it even harder to choose from, there are dial variations, or all those dial variations also are offered with diamond indices. So as you can see, you have a lot of variations. You can also choose if you want to have a white dial, a silver dial, a black dial, a champagne dial. These are just what we have here. And once you have chosen what you really want, or if you've seen different images, or if you see the watches in our video, you have to hunt the right watch. And the right watch is the one which offers the best set, the best condition, for the best price. And once you figured out the right price for your watch, there's a really good thing to know. It is the price on these watches is really stable. It's really stable. They don't really go down because, you know, they are already cheap in a way, but they're also not really moving up because people are not really speculating with those watches. And it's always nice to have as your first watch a watch that is not depreciating in price. And if people are not speculating, or if prices are also not appreciating, it's always good for you because you know, okay, what I paid now for the watch will also pay somebody after 2, 3, 4 or 5 years. Of course, take into consideration the condition stays the same. So if you wear it for 3, 4, 5 years, it needs to be polished to be sold again. But also polishing those watches is relatively simple. So every good polisher can do it. There is no need to go to the manufacturer itself who write you big bills, because you can just go to the free market, which is also really nice and also decreases the, let's say, maintenance costs for you. Same goes with the movement. All those movements of the Tudor Prince are on ETA basis. The ETA basis is really nice for beginners because maintenance is cheap. There are a lot of spare parts out on the market, and every free watchmaker is able to service the watch, which in the end also makes it cheaper for you if it needs a service, or if you want to sell after, let's say, 10 years and the dealer says, okay, I buy it from you, but we need to service and we need to polish it. Of course, the price, which is reduced from the normal buying price for service and polishing, is way lower than compared to watches that have own manufacturer movement or caliber in it, or are really hard to polish, or really need an expert to polish it. Which is also nice for you, because also during wearing the watch, you don't really lose a lot of money if you make scratches into the glass, or maybe if you hit the crystal and it gets a little chip or something. And this is also a really good part for you to consider whichever watch you buy as your first watch, because normally you don't want to lose money and your watch journey is just beginning. So the money that you saved or that you are ready to put into a watch should stay almost the same over the whole time, because maybe you want to trade up. So maybe you say, okay, I've been wearing the Tudor for like 3, 4, 5 years now. I saw that I like luxury watches, that the watch is really what I expect, but I want to, say, level up and I want to get a Rolex. Maybe a Datejust, which is almost looking the same, I would say, but you have like less style variations for the price point, of course. Or also other watches. If you say, okay, I was wearing a dressier watch for some years now, I want to get into a sports watch. If you enter the sports watch level, you are like in the, let's say, 6 to 10K range, where if you go to Rolex, for example. And if you have the Tudor and you paid like 3,000 euro for it, and you get out 5 years later 2,500 euros for it, you can just take it as a trade for your next watch. It's always nice to have the money there, and also, let's say, it feels like the new watch is a bit cheaper because you still have a lot of money in the other watch you won't be going to wear anymore when you buy the next one. So it's a really good, let's say, watch to also park your money in. The prices maybe will increase during time a few €100 because of inflation, or also because we as a dealer see that people are really buying and requesting those watches right now, and a lot of people see them as, let's say, undervalued. I can imagine that the prices will go to 3,500 to 4,000 euros, but honestly this will take some years, and it will also not be affected by the watch for you or for me to sell the watch. The selling point here really is the price point is nice, the variation is nice, price and you don't lose money when you trade up. Another point that speaks for buying a Tudor Prince date or a date day as your first watch is that there's no need for vintage. And people who know me, especially also from our German channel, know that I personally love vintage. But I'm also experienced, I'm into the watch market for years, I'm dealing watches. And when you're starting with watches, vintage is let's say a really critical point, because you simply cannot have the knowledge to know what you're buying in the end, and on top you are lacking the knowledge of the dealers that are good to go when you buy vintage. So it can always happen if you want to buy vintage, a vintage Rolex for example, because it's like cheaper than a modern Rolex, that you end up at a dealer that knows that you're a beginner or you're a starter, and he sells you the watch that he's not able to sell to an experienced guy. Of course you will get it at a good price point, for example, because he's not able to move it. But in the end, when you want to sell again, or if you want to trade up, it's always hard for you, because then an experienced guy, let's say like myself or another dealer, will tell you, okay, the hands are not right, the movement is changed, the rotor is changed, the bracelet is not original, it's over polished or whatsoever. So vintage is far more complex to buy or to trade as a first watch. It's always, also if it's your 10th watch, for example, but especially as your first watch, vintage is not really recommended by us. And the watch and the price point and what you get is really taking away this pain point from you, because you get a modern watch. They are all like from like, let's say 2010 to 2020, for example. This is the most common range for this type of watches. And so you have relatively modern watches that also may have been serviced one time already. For us, if you check our website, we have serviced like over 60 to 70% of all those watches, because when they were sold in 2014 and they come in now, they have not been serviced yet. So we service it for the new owner, which is always nice, because you can just buy it, wear it and enjoy it. There, you won't have any problems that a vintage watch has, for example, that the hands are loose or something. You won't really have problems with the stretch of the bracelet, and you won't really have problems that the watch needs a service or that the oil is not good anymore in the movement, which takes a lot of pain points from you. And the no need for vintage is a bigger point that you may expect, but telling you as an experienced watch guide is a really important point, because with vintage watches, it's like old-timer cars. You can always buy something bad, and there is always something to do, or some pain points with vintage watches. And as a beginner, you don't want to have it, because maybe it's your only watch, it's your single watch, and you don't want to have it at service for 2 or 3 months and not going to be able to wear it. Going on, the next point are the proportions and the size of these watches. So the mostly traded and requested Tudor Princes are 36mm, so just like the Datejust from Rolex. And as we almost reach in every video we do, 36mm is the perfect, it's really the perfect size for almost every wrist. Of course, if your wrist is super small, maybe 36mm gets too big, but up to like, let's say 20 to 21 centimeters, you can definitely wear a 36mm. There are also images of Mike Tyson out there wearing a 36mm Rolex Day-Date, and if Mike Tyson can wear a 36mm watch, you can also, definitely. Of course, if your personal taste is bigger watches, I would recommend to try on the watches before buying at a local store or somewhere, you know. It's also a good part, because these watches are around, let's say, everywhere. They are not really limited, they are out there in higher numbers, and so you can just go into the next bigger city, look for a dealer who has it in stock, and you can just try it on to see if the proportions and if the size suits you well and if you like it. One of our most famous videos in our German YouTube channel is a video about the Omega Speedmaster Reduced. We called it the perfect watch for beginners. And it got a lot of clicks, and we also sell, like many other dealers, a lot of Speedmaster Reduced. But what we saw with the time now, and why I would personally rank the Tudor Prince series higher than the Omega Speedmaster series as a beginner's watch, is simply that the Omega comes with a chronograph. And the chronograph is a module in the movement for a movement that was not meant to have a chronograph, which means it's, let's say, a bit unstable, and there are always problems occurring with those movements. And as people, or as the watch is relatively cheap and the movement is relatively hard to service, a lot of dealers and people don't want to make the effort to service the watch, but they just sell it like it is. Which brings you into the situation that you really don't know if you get a watch with a good movement or not. We also experienced that also freshly service Speedmaster Reduced have problems after 6 to 8 months, which is like really bad because the watch has to go back on guarantee. It needs to be serviced again. There has to be a problem analysis. Why is it not working anymore? And so on and so on. It's also because the chronograph complication makes the watch more complicated and there are more points that could break or fail in the movement compared to a simple ether-based movement which is built into the Tudor Prince series. Moreover, the Tudor Prince series is better for daily use because the big Speedmaster or Omega problem often is that water in daily use, for example if you wash your hands, is not really nice to be hit on the watch because also with the chronograph there are more areas where water can get inside the watch compared to the Tudors. They have a screw down crown and they are not as fragile as the Omega Speedmaster. Fragility is also a really important point because with the movement in the Omega Speedmaster and the chronograph module you have much more fragility compared to those Tudors. I think the Tudor is really like, it's also, you know, because it belongs to the Rolex group, more like a Rolex movement which is like, you know, made for decades, so to say, and the Omega is more like a fragile movement with a chronograph that is nice for a low point. But also, if there is a problem with the Omega and you need to service it, the costs because of the chronograph module is way higher compared to the ether movement that is into the Tudor watches. Therefore, you really need to consider if you want to have a chronograph, if you say, okay, I'm a chronograph enthusiast, I need a chronograph in my daily life, I don't know many people that need it, maybe you should go to the Omega Speedmaster Reduced. But if you don't really care about the chronograph, I would in 10 of 10 cases recommend you to go to the Tudor Date or Tudor Date Day from the Prince series because it's a way better watch for daily use and wear and tear, and therefore a way better watch for beginners, and if it's your only watch, that is one like every day or to every occasion. So to summarize the whole video, we would highly recommend the Tudor Prince series as your first watch. The variations you can choose from gives you as a beginner a broad portfolio of it. And also, even if there is a high number out there or somebody else is wearing the same Tudor Prince, the probability that the watch has the same configuration like your watch is really low. And if you're spending a lot of money on your watch, you of course don't want to look like everybody else. So it's a real nice side effect to have a lot of different variations out there to choose from. Moreover, the durability of the watch, just like the service and maintenance costs of the watch, are just sexy compared to other watches in the market. And the value, which is, I would call it really stable in the market, gives you as a beginner the opportunity to get this one as your first watch, and later on when you have more money or if you're ready to spend more money on a luxury watch, to just trade it up without losing money or losing too much money. I'm not a fan of promising you won't lose any money, but if you wear this watch for 5 years, you bought it for 3,000 euros, you can trade it in for 2,500 euros. The watch costs you 100 euro a year in the end, which is nothing. Let's say when selling you also need a polish and you need a service, and the dealer calculates this with, like, let's say 400 euros. The watch costs you 900 euros over 5 years, which is like 180 euros a year if I see it right, and 180 euros a year for having a nice luxury watch on the wrist that is respected by collectors, also by watch dealers, and which is really easy to move if you need to move, so if you need to sell or if you want to trade it in, is a good deal. I thank you very much for listening to my presentation about the Tudor Prince series and why we think it's a really good beginner's watch. We are also keen on hearing your opinion into the comments about these watches. Maybe you own the watch, maybe you want to own this watch. And as you can see here, we have a lot of watches in here in all the different variations. So if you want to choose your perfect beginner's watch or your next luxury watch or your next daily beater watch, I think we always have a perfect Tudor Prince in stock for you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on the channel. Bye bye and thank you.